You don't. You just change the channel. Good morning, everyone. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. You've all heard that before. Is Carla Christina Contreras here? No. She doesn't get a prize. Today we're going to bring our monthly theme, which is minding your mind, to a close as we look at our topic today. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. Diane asked you last week, if you knew who said that phrase. And Carla, was she the only one that came up with an answer? And she was correct. Half correct, anyway. But she's not here, so she doesn't get her prize. But Mark Twain actually said, age is a matter of mind. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. But later, Jack Benny simplified it, saying, if you don't mind, it doesn't matter. And Carla sent us the correct answer of Jack Benny, saying that when she was growing up in her house, they had a picture or a saying in a frame or whatever of that phrase, if you don't mind, it doesn't matter. So Carla Christina Contreras is the winner. Did you bring her a prize anyway? Congratulations to Carla. While, if you don't mind, it doesn't matter. If that, seems a little shallow to you, there's actually some deep wisdom in it. So we're going to dive into it today and find that deep wisdom. Our minds can be these little mischievous little imps, can't they? And because of a lot of things can really matter to us. Can't they? You know what I'm saying? We can get worked up over things that then take on these proportions that are much greater than they need to be. Anybody have experienced that? Never. Okay, Trey. You've got it. You've got it. You can leave. Our minds can conjure up these negative and wasteful thoughts from just simple situations and convince us to react rather than to respond, right? And they can easily make mountains out of molehills. My mother used to say that a lot. And then she would make a mountain out of a molehill. And so they readily make small things big and medium-sized things gigantic. They supersize them, right? And we do a good job of supersizing, of awfulizing our thoughts. Mark Twain once said, I've been through some terrible things in my life, some of which actually happened. So the rest of which only happened in his mind. In other words, our minds can be very, very unruly. You know what I'm talking about? In Houston Smith's book, World Religions, which I strongly recommend, it's a wonderful book on the different religions of the world, a good overview of all of them. He gives a pretty apt description of what the mind often does. In this context, he's discussing the practices of the Hindu religion, particularly meditation. But see if it doesn't actually apply perfectly to what we were just talking about. He writes, the motions of the average mind, say the Hindus, are about as orderly as those of a crazed monkey cavorting about its cage. Hey, we're not done yet here. Nay, more, like the prancing of a drunk, crazed monkey. Even so, we've not conveyed its restlessness. The mind is like a drunken, crazed monkey that has St. Vitus dance, which is a physical disorder characterized by rapid, uncoordinated, jerking movements. To do justice to our theme, however, we must go a final step. The mind is like a drunken, crazed monkey with St. Vitus' dance who has just been stung by a wasp. Few who have seriously tried to meditate will find this metaphor extreme. The trouble with the advice to leave your mind alone is the unimpressive spectacle that remains. I tell my hand to rise and it obeys. I tell my mind to be still and it mocks my command. How long can the average mind think about one thing? One thing only, without slipping in first into thinking about that thing, and taking off from there on a senseless chain of irrelevancies. Anybody following this? You been there? Done that? How long? About 3.5 seconds, psychologists tell us. Like a ping pong ball, the mind will alight wherever its owner directs it, but only to take off immediately on a jittery flight of staccato bounces that are completely out of hand. What if the mind could be turned from a ping pong ball into a lump of dough, which when thrown sticks to the wall until it's deliberately removed? Would not its power increase if it could be held thus in focus? Would not its strength be compounded like the strength of a light bulb ringed by reflectors? And now, quoting from the Upanishads, Smith says, when all senses are stilled, when the mind is at rest, when the intellect wavers not, that, say the wise, is the highest state. I think I got a little ways to go. How about you? And that entire treatise by Smith was about meditation, which of course is a powerful, powerful tool for strengthening our minds. But let me give you another one that if you do, that you can do in the moment. And it's the power of a focusing question. It has great, great power. So when your mind becomes overwhelmed with something that you are minding, and that usually comes with the not enough thought, like not enough money, not enough time, not enough love, not enough friends, not enough opportunities, or it could be annoyances, angers, irritations. Once you notice this, because you are standing guard at the portal of your minds, aren't you? Once you notice this, you ask yourself a specific focusing, refocusing question. And that question is, what would I love here? What would I love here in this situation? But not in a fantasy way, like I would love for this person to quit being a jerk and just do what I like. Or I would love this big bill that I just received to disappear. But given what the facts are, right here and right now, what would I love now, right here? It's simple, but it's very powerful. And the reason why it is very powerful is because your mind goes on a search for what you would love right here in your given situation, whatever it is. It goes looking for it. And when the mind goes looking for something in earnest, it finds it. Ernest Holmes tells us in the Science of Mind textbook, he says, one of the most important things for us to remember is that we are always causing something to be created for us. That's one of the things that really bothered me when I first came into Science of Mind, that I was responsible for my life. And I know that every one of us is struck with that when we come into this teaching. He writes, one of the most important things for us to remember is that we are always causing something to be created for us, and that whatever cause we have set in motion must produce some kind of effect. So let me give you an example of the power of a focused question. And it's not in the direction that one would want. Dr. Reverend Michael Beckwith from the Agape Church in Los Angeles, I know a lot of you are familiar with who he is. He once told this story on himself. He said that on his drive to church every morning, he would regularly pass a homeless man on the corner. And he would stop and he would give him water and food and talk with him. And he soon discovered, after talking to him several times, that this man was really smart. He was really articulate. He was really, really sharp. And he started asking himself a powerful focusing question. How does someone like that, smart, articulate, sharp, end up homeless and on the streets? How does that happen? And not too long after he posed that question to his mind several times, he received a big envelope in the mail from the IRS with a tax bill for thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And he goes, "Oh, that's how that could happen." That's how something like that can happen. I think I need to watch the kind of questions I ask my mind to find out. So that's very true, because we are creative beings. And an answer our minds go searching for will be found. And an empowering question that sets in motion an effect that is in harmony with goodness, life, and love is, what would I love here? There's your searching question. What would I love in this situation? So here's the deal. Unless we create clear boundaries for the mind and train it to stay within those limits through our daily meditation and practices, it's going to continue to waver and continue to create disturbance and confusion. If we allow 1,000 little things to overtake our mind, we're going to constantly be upset, aggravated, and unhappy. But if we decide not to give something trivial our attention, then it will cease to bother us. In fact, we probably won't even notice it's there. That's the power of being in charge of our minds. We need to conquer the mind, not the situation. Situations come and go. That's out there. But if we realize that it just doesn't matter, then you can let it go. There's an article in the newspaper several years ago about Clint Eastwood as a director. And it was, they quoted an actor that had worked on his film Flags of Our Fathers. And he said, Clint Eastwood lives in the moment. He seems undaunted by any setback and can turn any situation into a positive. He says he embraces everything. He recalled a day on the set when they had 500 extras and a whole army of fighting vehicles, and they were confronted with rain. They couldn't film. Well, Eastwood moved the cameras to another location to shoot a dream sequence, and then when the rain let up in a couple hours, and so they went back and continued on. He said, I mean, nothing's a problem with him. It's always an opportunity. That's a good example. Earl Nightingale created a program years and years ago called The Magic Word. The whole program was designed to help you discover what the magic word was. When you discovered what it was, you had power. Finally, after a series of activities and exercises, you discovered that magic word. So lucky for you this morning, you want to know what that word is, don't you? The magic word. You don't have to go through all of that because I'm going to tell you. The word is attitude. He told his participants that when they finally understand the power of their attitude, they would understand the power that they could wield in their lives. So today, let's each recognize that we hold the magic word, and it really is the authority and the power with which we see things. And I know that I've spoken before about Dr. Harry Morgan Moses. He had a word that he created called Habitude, and I always gave him credit for it. The habit of your attitudes is what actually creates your life. So I love that word, and I was always giving Harry Morgan Moses credit for that word. When Reverend Franklin came to me a couple weeks later and said, I was just reading an old book by Ernest Holmes, and he used the word habitude. So there's nothing new under the sun. And then a few weeks after that, I came to Reverend Franklin, and I said, Reverend Franklin, I was just reading the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin, and he used that word. Habitudes. I love that word. The habit of your attitudes. It's the way in which we create our lives, our attitudes, our habitudes. Let us choose carefully, for in that is the power of the day, the power of each moment in our lives. I want to illustrate that point with an article that is entitled Attitude is Everything, and it was written by Francie Baltazar Schwartz. And it goes like this. Jerry was the kind of guy that you love to hate. He was always in a good mood and always had something positive to say. When someone would ask him how he was doing, he would reply, "If I were any better, I'd be twins." Jerry was the manager in the restaurant business, and a unique thing often happened to him. When he would change restaurants, he had waiters following him around from restaurant to restaurant. Why? Because of his attitude. He was a natural motivator. If an employee was having a bad day, Jerry was there telling the employee how to look on the positive side of the situation. See, he could be very irritating, right? Seeing this style really made me curious. So one day I went up to Jerry and I asked him, "I don't get it. You can't be a positive person all the time. How do you do it?" Jerry replied, "Each morning I wake up and I say to myself, Jerry, you have two choices today. You can choose to be in a good mood, or you can choose to be in a bad mood. I choose to be in a good mood. Each time something bad happens, I can choose to be a victim, or I can choose to learn from it. I choose to learn from it. Every time someone comes to me complaining, I can choose to accept their complaining, or I can point out the positive side of life. I choose the positive side of life." "Yeah, right. It's not that easy," I protested. "Yes, it is," Jerry said. "Life is all about choices. When you cut away all the junk, every situation is a choice. You choose how you react to situations. You choose how people will affect your mood. The bottom line is, it's your choice how you live life." Soon after that conversation, I left the restaurant industry to start my own business. Jerry and I lost touch, but I often thought about him when I made a choice about life instead of just reacting to life. And several years later, I heard that Jerry did something that you are never, ever supposed to do. He left the back door of the restaurant open one night. As a result, 3 armed robbers held him up at gunpoint. And while he was trying to open the safe, his hand, shaking from nervousness, slipped off the combination, and one of the robbers panicked and shot him. Jerry was found relatively quickly and rushed to the local trauma center, and after 18 hours of surgery and weeks of intensive care, Jerry was released from the hospital with fragments of the bullets still in his body. I saw Jerry about 6 months after the accident. When I asked him how he was, he replied, "If I were any better, I'd be twins. Want to see my scars?" I declined to see his wounds, but I did ask him what had gone through his mind as the robbery took place. "The first thing that went through my mind was that I should have locked the back door," he replied. "Then as I lay on the floor bleeding, I remembered that I had 2 choices. I could choose to live or I could choose to die. I chose to live. Weren't you scared, I asked? Jerry continued, not at first. The paramedics were great. They kept telling me I was going to be fine. But when they wheeled me into the emergency room, I saw the expression on the faces of the doctors and nurses. And then I got scared. In their eyes, I read, he's a dead man. I knew I had to take action. What did you do? I asked. Well, there was a big burly nurse shouting questions at me, said Jerry. She asked me if I was allergic to anything. Yes, I replied. The doctors and the nurses stopped working as they waited for my reply. I took a deep breath and yelled, bullets! Over their laughter, I told them, I am choosing to live. Operate on me as if I am alive, not dead. Well, Jerry lived thanks to the skill of the doctors, but also because of his amazing attitude. I learned from him that day that every day we have the choice to live fully. Attitude, after all, is everything. Choice is all there is. Ernest Holmes tells us, prepare your mind to receive the best that life has to offer. Prepare your mind by minding your mind. Decide to let go of the things that don't really matter. And we all have a lot of things that don't really matter, right? Draw clear boundaries in your mind. As a master, choose what you prefer to focus your attention on. And stay there by asking, what would I love here? And remember, if you don't mind, doesn't matter. Let's say that together. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. And so it is.